army and the fleet. And at the end, there's treachery, cowardice, and deceit everywhere around us. This was, by the way, one of my students was a Russian officer in the army, and he wanted to give me a lesson about the history of Russia and the importance of Russia and the global economy. In other words, the way the World Bank is looking at things is absolutely the wrong way of thinking. It could lead us to a disaster. And traitors, like the one that is criticizing governance in Russia, well, maybe they should just disappear, and that would be better. Because, you know, Russia has had many enemies, and maybe the question mark there is the World Bank. Hey, I didn't make these slides, I swear to God, I copy and paste them, okay? You can tell, right? The formatting is a little different. But I didn't want to make these slides because these are just great responses to what happens when you criticize governance. What about China? Anybody here was on the roads in China, or for that matter in India? There seems to be a lot of rules. But very few people seem to want to obey those rules. Well, what does that mean? It means that, well, we're selling a lot of cars, and that's really good for the car companies. You have a 40-year-old guy driving a car, but he only has 5 years experience. So the institutions in China, they look as though they're Taiwan or Hong Kong on paper. But when you start looking at things, foreigners seeing a really good opportunity to invest. Why don't we go and invest in China? And the local people say, look at these idiots. They're willing to invest in this, and they don't know what's really going on under the surface. They see this as opportunity to loot. This guy, another guy I admire a lot, his name is Xiaomin Li. He's a professor right now in America, in Old Dominion University. But he was a professor, before being a professor in America, he's a professor of international business in Hong Kong. And in 2001, he crosses over from Hong Kong to mainland China, to Shenzhen, and he gets arrested. The reason he gets arrested is because evidently he was spying on the Chinese all these years. I don't know how he had time to write papers in A-level journals, because while he's writing papers, evidently he's also doing some spy work on the side. The CIA, Taiwan Intelligence Services. Well, let's see what he wrote about. In fact, he wrote about governance, and he criticizes China for bad governance and for covering up a lot of things, and for not being open, and for not reporting truthfully about what is really happening in the world. So I'm not going to read you everything, but I just took this, he wrote a foreword to one of my books in 2003. He said, when economies expand from local to national to international in scope, the relation-based governance becomes inefficient due to the high marginal cost of developing and maintaining relations. And the society must establish better rules that are more impartial, fair, transparent, and efficient. China is now undergoing this transition. But this transition is not easy nor smooth. It is disruptive, oftentimes confusing and chaotic. For example, in Beijing, you will notice the coexistence of a traffic police officer, relation-based, and an automatic traffic light, a rule-based, in the same intersection, both giving direction to traffic. What is worse is that often they're not consistent and people are confused as to which one to follow. I follow the police, as I learned painfully. One of the features of transition is that laws remain ink on paper and are not impartially or efficiently enforced. Inexperienced investors reading these laws, most of them adopted from mature economies like Taiwan, view the transition as presenting opportunities to invest, while the insiders view it as an opportunity to lose. So the point is that India, Russia, China, all these great emerging markets in Asia are in fact still relation-based economies. There are opportunities for people that are linked in, that are connected to government officers, that are connected to powerful oligarchs, which are keeping people who are not part of that system to take advantage of the real opportunities. I thought that Mr. Shah made some wonderful remarks about the problems in India, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. This is exactly the point that I'm referring to over here. Two wonderful scholars came to my college to give a talk. One of them says, "When China rules the world," by Martin Jacks. The other one The Common Collapse of China by Gordon Chang, both of them speaking about the same country, suggesting that the opposite outcome. One says that China will collapse, the other one that China already rules the world. In fact, that's his argument. And which one is right? Well, again, I think we need to look at what had happened over time with China. So this is the map of China, and here I have 2008 on the top, and 1996 on the bottom. And you can see that the biggest bottleneck in China right now is voice and accountability, which I think is something that you can equate to democracy, right? To what extent is the government accountable to the people? And it's really not exceptional in any way, in the way it's governed. And by the way, the investments in Africa are not because the Chinese want to develop Africa, it's because they want to get the resources out. And the one infrastructure project is to get a road from the oil plant to the seaside. Okay? So let's not forget the real purpose here. And that is that if we were to trust China to be the leader of the world, we need to be able to trust the institutions that they build. And at the moment, they build beautiful roads and beautiful infrastructure, but the soft infrastructure, the basic governance is underdeveloped. So you'll have a beautiful road going through a farmer village, going through a peasant village, and the local peasants don't know what to do with it. Maybe they'll dry some of their vegetables on it or their rice because it's a black surface. And the car's whizzing by at 100 kilometers an hour will suffer the consequences later. What about India? Well, there's bigger experts on India than me here. But I think we all know about the corruption and inequality and gridlock in government and the caste system that we haven't gotten over and religious fractionalization and literacy and red tape. And I just recently, when I was in India, I read a thesis written by a Brit when they left India. And at that point, in that thesis, he was very excited, the thesis writer, about the potential of India because of demographics, because of the economic potential, because of the will of the people to be educated. And I just thought it was really ironic that that story hasn't changed. It's the same thing I read in the Literature and Business Week today. This is when the Brits left. Why is that story not changed? Why India has not already emerged? Why is Indira International Airport looks like I'm developing? Why is the infrastructure so underdeveloped? And you've different bottlenecks, but at the end, the same problem. Limitation to sustainable economic growth. Well, let's look at India. India, in fact, is much better on voice and accountability. And Indians will be the first one to point out how China is not democratic and we are democratic. So what? You have other problems. Political stability is one of them. You know, the corruption is deep and it goes across all levels. Yeah, so yes, you have 200 million people who are working in the IT sector and are benefiting from the globalization of markets and the need for IT services and outsourced services at a cheaper price. But ask yourself, why is it that the engineer is getting paid 1/10 the price? Same quality engineer. Why should they get? They should actually get a full price, like everybody else around in the developed world, right? Opportunities for entrepreneurs, like the ones that we have here, to create ecosystems around this poverty, and to create an opportunity to manufacture at 1/10 the price. Only problem is you can't get it out of the country in India in a profitable way. So you have to focus on IT, so you can just send it through the wires. You don't have to worry about getting it out of the country. By the way, let's look at the governance indicators of India. And now I have 2009 on the top and 96, 13 years of data. Doesn't look like major improvement in almost any of the indicators. In fact, the rule of law, which is, according to economists, one of the most important aspects, that we can trust each other. Right? At the end of the day, this country's ability to do business is based on hundreds of years of rule of law and court systems that have enabled us to trust the system. And those things for the most part, we haven't seen that increasing in India. We've seen that actually get worse over time, which is, I think, surprising and unfortunate. So the basic storyline is that I think governance matters. And I think that we can't just make these simplistic assumptions and projections and say these two countries, India and China, respectively, will take over the world. Yeah, maybe in PPP GDP, but what does that really mean? What does it mean to the average Chinese? What does it mean when, in fact, the average Chinese has to be choking on pollution while they're getting richer? And why is it that Mr. Yu came back to Atlanta forever? And why is it that every rich person, most desired possession in China is a green card? Yes, you can make money in China. I, myself, have benefited from the rise of China. I cannot deny it. I'm very happy about China. I'm a friend of China, but China needs to make improvements, so does India. Can countries lead the world economically and still have bad governance? My opinion is no. I think that, I'm sorry, but I believe that we have a huge advantage with the currency. That the fact that we can tax the entire world by printing more money. We can return our debt in the currency we took them. We can just print money and give it back, paper money. So at the moment, we're actually getting a pretty good deal because we're getting a lot of goods and services from India and China, and in return, we're giving them IOU notes, which we will return in depreciated dollars by printing the machine. I think we got a pretty good deal. Now, is the renminbi ready for showtime? No. The renminbi is not even a convertible currency. The renminbi is becoming important, but the reason, by the way, that we don't have a kind of a unit of a currency unit that is a multinational currency because it didn't work. We tried that after World War II. It's called SDRs. Didn't work. Nobody was interested in them. It was gold and US dollar, and eventually the gold was dropped and US dollar became the only currency. I do think that Asian currency will play an important role, particularly the renminbi. But it's not going to happen that I think the world is going to convert over to renminbi-denominated international contracts. It's even hardly happens in China because most Chinese would rather give me US dollars when I work there because they're flush with them, they don't know what to do with them. So can countries improve competitiveness regardless of governance? No. Look, you can only make so many roads before you run out of space to build roads. Japan found out, and China will find out also. And money alone is not enough. It's about knowledge, and it's not about knowledge acquisition. It's about knowledge development. See, Chinese companies are buying all sorts of companies, or I've done cases on some of these companies, and one of the biggest problems is they lose the talent. They buy these companies, and they lose the key talent, and they don't know how to absorb the knowledge, and even when they know how to absorb the knowledge, they don't know how to develop the very knowledge that they absorbed, which was really the key asset of any company. The key asset of every individual is our ability to develop over time, to learn something. So, demographics, I know it's very nice that there's a lot of young people somewhere. Energy prices, it's nice to have a lot of oil in the ground. But you know, I originally came from Israel, a country with no oil. And surrounded by countries with oil. And in Israel moved from a developing country to a mature economy within 30 years. The GDP per capita equivalent to Western Europe or America, with no resources. What about a lot of the neighboring countries? Even with a lot of resources, we're never able to develop an economy, diversified, high-tech, innovation-based economy. Geopolitical positioning, that has a role. China's certainly spending a lot on security and trying to position itself in Asia, but let's face it, China and India don't like each other. Okay, this is not going to be a love fest over here between China and India.